Hello, one and all, and welcome back to Roll Insight, the show on the Hidden Realms channel where I, your humble resident GM Joshua MacGregor, talks a little bit about the previous episodes of the Mockeries and the Reserve List. This is a very exciting one. I get to talk about some very cool stuff that has started to go into development. But before we can begin, we must roll insight as our gimmick for the show. And that's a 13, and that's a lot better than we usually do. I think last time we got a 12, and that was especially good, and this time we got a 13. So very cool. We have not yet established, actually, like, we've just been rolling this on the D20. We haven't established if there are any bonuses to insight that anybody gets. But maybe you get bonuses to insight when certain things get unlocked. I don't know. When do you reach level 4? You get an ability score increase. In any case, I had a topic prepared for today, which is that these episodes are very short. I know that doesn't feel very much like a topic, but there's a bit more to get into when it comes to that. And as well as talking about the events of episodes 8 of both the Reserve List and the Mockeries. So let's get right into it. I want to start with the Reserve List this time around. So the Reserve List have a bit of a shopping episode mixed in with some with some other bits. And this was really fun because they got to shop around for more better instruments, which have yet to help them, but they will. They absolutely will. Actually, I need to make a note of that somewhere. Is that these instruments that they buy actually will help their performances. They will give them a little bonus when they are facing off against other bands. And then they also went and did some scroll/book shopping, which is very fun indeed, and was completely unexpected by me. So I prepare, every time they go into a new town, I prepare different NPCs that I expect them to come in on, or like come to, or whatever. The Mockeries had this, I think it was last episode, with M, who was the blacksmith. I had not prepared M at all. I was like, oh, they need a blacksmith character. Oh, who can I do? And the same thing for Glyn, or Glynarecticon, or Glynarecticon, I believe is what his name is. The gnome, who's just called Glyn. And he's this gnome, and I got really good feedback from the players on this guy. Coming up with characters on the spot is sort of memed about a lot as a DM. People online are like, oh yeah, coming up with characters on the spot, really hard. Coming up with names on the spot, really hard. It is. It's really difficult to do. And it's even more difficult to do in a memorable way. I think M is an example of a lesser memorable character, somebody who's not especially anything, but serves for, and she wasn't willing to melt down the symbol of Malar, but that's not really a personality thing. That's just common sense. And then, but Glyn has a lot more character. He's old. He's got a particular voice. He barters with them and stuff like that. He's into like the old timey music. So coming up with Glyn and having those interactions was very fun indeed. But I also knew that we had to get up to particular places in the story, which is something that I'm kind of leaning back on now. I know, like, I'm not so pressured to get through anything as much because people are starting to, like, new players are really getting into what the game is, and which means we can sort of take time with the bits that are fun for everybody. So but I did want to get to the reason of the conflict in Croshier, uh, besides the Edgar Galanis stuff, um, this episode. So by the end, they discover that somebody has been killed on campus, and yeah, that's just going to be the focus of the next few episodes of the reserve list. Is spending more time in Asterfeld and Croshier than in the previous towns, and then moving on to even bigger places with more stuff going on that they can sort of explore in more of an open worldy sort of way, which is very exciting. Which is a very exciting direction for the show to go in, and um, and hopefully will be exciting for the players to get to play through. It's yeah, it's going to be really fun. But insofar as this episode goes, yes, they discover that somebody has been killed. They see the sheriff, the Spire Genasi with the Hades hair. They see. First, let me just do a little side tangent and say that Hercules, the Disney animated film, is a travesty when it comes to adapting Greek mythology, but actually has quite a lot going for it as a movie on its own. I think it's a fun film, with a lot more like adult themes and stuff than you'd expect from a children's film. Any case, we move right along. Oh yes, and we also get that book in the restricted section that Tom Barr was so interested in opening. I'm going to be completely honest, and this is the embarrassing part of the Roll Insight. I had no idea what I was going to do if he opened that damn thing. I had no idea what I was going to do, and I have more of an idea now. But again, I filmed these Roll Insights live. And these episodes were filmed quite a little ways behind when I'm doing these. So there quite a bit has happened since this episode where he got the book, or almost took the book. But I fully expect, because he was so curious about it, and because he said in this episode, I'm going to come back for that book, that he will come back for the book. And so I may have had some time to prepare some stuff for that. So that's very exciting. The other thing from no, I think that's it actually for the reserve list. They set up the gig. Oh yes, let's talk a little bit about D. D. Pondsmith is the proprietor of the Gentle Repose, which is the same name as a certain spell, and that may or may not have been on purpose. But D is the Tortle proprietor of the Gentle Repose, and the idea of setting up an additional gig because they came to town early, so as to look into Edgar a little bit more, was super cool, and I'm super excited to see where that goes. I'm super excited for you to see where that goes, but also for me. Fantastic. And then, so D is a character that is previously established in this world. I've talked a little bit on this show about a home game that I ran called Before the Fall. And originally that title was meant to insinuate Before the Fall of Avernus, because the beginning of that campaign took place. Basically, the idea was Asmodeus and his generals were conquering the Nine Hells from the bottom up. And they used to belong to other people, other mortals and people. And this was the before Avernus, which was the last of the layers of Bator, before Avernus fell. But then it continued and it moved on, and evolved, and the characters moved to Cygalia from the Nine Hells, and continued the story, and it became Before the Fall of Lolth. So in Cygalia, for context, there are many traditional D&D gods. There are 8 outer worlds, outer planes, and so 8 of the classics. So Nine Hells is one. Acheron with the orcs is another. I actually think I might be able to list them all. Okay, so the evil ones are the Nine Hells, the Abyss, Pandemonium, and Acheron. And then the positive ones are Mount Celestia, Arborea, Arvandor. No. Arvandor and Arborea are actually the same. I know that. So Mount Celestia, Arvandor, the Beast Lands, and Isgard. And each of those has 3 deities, except that has shifted 224 years before Race to the Battle of the Bands. Lolth was actually killed, and there are extreme circumstances around what that is, and I'm working on getting videos together to put on the channel to sort of act as a history campaign, so that you, the watchers, can get a little bit more of a taste of the history of this world. But yes, so in that campaign, D. Pondsmith was a young man. His father was named Alexander, and he was the mayor of a little town. And he's this druid who was part of a group called the Lion's Pride, and they were allies to the great heroes Awen and Poultice, a half-elf and an earth genasi who killed Lolth. That was their heroic journey. So D got married and he retired, and he now owns an inn called the Gentle Repose in in Crushier. And the device that he uses to block out sound so that everybody can get a good night's sleep is a magical item that was created by his good friend Barzad Kane, who was another member of the same team, who was a human and therefore is dead now. But he was a wizard, and they were teammates. So when Alberta had that incredible reaction to seeing D again, that's because Alberta was one of the players in that home game, and there are a few people around in Crushier and stuff that you might recognize. And when they show, there are more who are going to show up, and I will be able to say, hey, go and check out this one shot that we did, or hey, go back and check out the God Heist. So that's going to be very fun. Great. The other thing that we want to talk about is the Mockeries, episode 8. So the Mockeries, episode 8, is when they actually go into the dungeon of the Silver Scythe. Now, there's a lot of sort of weirdness and lore dumpiness that happens. Essentially, the idea behind God Heist is that Cygalia is not alone in the multiverse. In addition to having its own gods and its own outer planes, it is a world that floats around a sun, and that there are other worlds in the same universe. And the discovery of one, Vulpikar, leads to the events of the God Heist, and the interactions between these different magics, these different cultures and things was the point of that story. And the Mockeries, the originally Race to the Battle of the Bands was not supposed to have anything to do with that, but it is pre-established that there are no Tabaxi on Cygalia originally, because Tabaxi were one of the strange new races in the God Heist that were on Vulpikar. And when one of my players said, I want to play a Tabaxi, the most obvious thing to do is to say, yes, of course you can play a Tabaxi, but here is how it works in this setting. And in this setting, basically, there are no Tabaxi native to Cygalia, but there are Tabaxi in the setting, just not of this world. And so forgive me, I keep losing my train of thought. So Lily, who plays Cloud, was more than happy for that to be the case. And this whole idea of like trying to find her people and this whole thing came into being. And it became an interesting way of connecting this story more in terms of like what is happening cosmically and out in the whole universe. And it's a great opportunity. You'll see next episode to bring a particular character from God Heist back in a meaningful way and in a way that will eventually make a lot of sense. So all of that is preamble to say that the strange murals in this episode have nothing to do with Cygalian mythology, but have to do with stuff that is happening more outward. I have a lot more that I have to say, but I actually embarrassingly need to use the bathroom. So I'm going to leave this going for a minute and be back as soon as I can. I'm sorry to leave you alone. I'll be back soon. Yes. Hello. Can you give me 10 minutes? Oh, thank you. Now I forgot. I'll be up in some time. Yeah. Good to see you. Dear Lord, I am so sorry. The illusion comes off for leaving in the middle of a stream. That's very unprofessional, but it was necessary as well. I didn't want to cut it short. Okay. That's the first time that's happened. Let's finish up. So yes, the murals and this history has nothing to do with Cygalian mythology or cosmology, nothing to do with the pantheon on this world, but it will feed into what happens later on in the story of the Mockeries and will eventually make a little bit more sense. So that it is tied in with Cloud's story, with the Tabaxi story, and with the introduction of this character who will show up next episode. The rest of what happens. Oh yes, the enormous werewolf who comes for them is very, very powerful and is one of the faction leaders, and one of the idea that I've got currently for this story, the way that it seems to be turning out, is that there are a few factions which are becoming more clearly defined in this next arc of Astrofeld. And then going forward, those factions are factions that can be joined or tricked or played against one another in order for the Mockeries to fulfill their goals. Their own goals, not the goals of the various factions, although they could end up fulfilling the goals of the various factions. The werewolves and Jen have been talked about, but this enormous werewolf who can kill somebody and race towards them, that is one of them. That's Jen. And we'll learn a little bit more about Jen and what makes them tick going forward. And then the weird timey-wimey space. Time travel is notoriously difficult to tell effectively. And the dangers of putting time travel in a in a story are numerous, especially in D&D, where players will use and abuse stuff. I have made this mistake in a different home game that I played, but so officially, time is something that can be wiggled around in lore now. But the way that time travel works here is that every 300 years, this celestial event creates a time where things are echoing, things are connecting. So the examples of people who are talking back and forth are obviously Madison, who talks to Cloud, but is in the past, and then Theramin's father, Balzabul, who came to this place in a piloted clone body, looking to get the scythe 300 years prior, for his own reasons and his own goals, which may or may not still be his goals. That is worth investigating further, and it shall be investigated further. So Balzabul is also out on his own, doing his own thing, plotting his plots, trying not to be a slug anymore. But he appears here as he was before he was transformed, and reveals that he has actually been trying to get out of a contract with Asmodeus. This is a very famous contract, or rather, very big contract that is a very big deal in the story of the Nine Hells, which is something that hopefully we'll be getting to do an actual mini campaign on, called Hell Raid, which I don't know when that's going to happen. It may be many months away, but I prepped for it, and the idea is that there's quite a lot of history to the Nine Hells and how the Nine Hells works. And if Balzabul is able to sever his connection to Asmodeus, he would be able to exit the hierarchy of the Nine Hells, which is a whole thing that he could do. Okay, that may be a little bit spoilerific, but he's got his. He doesn't say his reasons and what have you. So we'll discover more as the story goes along. So yes, Thurman gets to talk to his dad before his dad knows who he is. And Cloud gets a talk with Madison, who is this diviner who she's not meant to be. It's not meant to be the case of like, I can see everything, but I can't see some things. I mean, it is that, but she is an incredibly powerful oracle who never had a teacher, who was completely ostracized, whose talent was never recognized uh, by a master who could train her. And she has become outclassed by somebody who has similar powers to her, but an incredibly different upbringing and training to use those powers. So we'll see. We'll see how things go with that. I think that's it. I think no. That's right. Let's talk about Peter and Marta. Peter and Marta are with them. They take a letter off of them, which they have not yet looked at, but is quite funky. And it is fascinating to me seeing what happens later. That they get so good, like the rolls for the sleight of hand and what have you are so good that they pass all of that with flying colors. And it is interesting the space that they are in because of what could very easily have happened otherwise in this space. And that is the most insight I am able to give without giving spoilers away. So let's move on from the content of those episodes and let's talk about the topic of the day, which is that these episodes are really short, and they are. These episodes are actually a bit longer than usual, but on average, the episodes are going to be between 50 minutes and an hour and 20. And the reason for that is we want to put out an episode every week. Hopefully they are digestible. I know personally, I have gotten used to dedicating 2 to 4 hours for a D&D podcast or a D&D show like Critical Role. But these episodes are a little bit more manageable, hopefully to fit into your day and to be able to watch. And it means like maybe you'll want to watch 1, 2, keep going with the story. We film these, generally speaking, once a fortnight, and we are getting to the point now where we're filming them with the knowledge that half of it's going to be released one week and half of it the next. So that is developing. That is on its way to being a little bit more concrete and fluid, as it were. Was I gonna? Oh yes. So on the topic of these short episodes, it may be the case that it doesn't appear that a lot happens over the course of one episode, but things are so as opposed to, oh yes, we've got 4 uninterrupted hours. It's 4 segmented episodes for things to get done. But for us, it's like we're trying our best to make the best show we can with the limitations of different people's schedules and difficulties getting these things together, which is a huge thing, especially coordinating like I am with multiple different groups. And just the privilege that I need to be able to say this, the privilege that we have to be able to create and share our games and our fun and our stories with the world, with you, is something that is so easy to take for granted and should never be taken for granted. The fact that people watch these shows and that we have the technology to record them and put them up for people to enjoy is very, very wonderful. It's very wonderful, and it makes me very proud. It's It's great as well because it means that I have to take fewer notes because I can always go back and rewatch an episode uh, to remember what happened last time, and it keeps sort of a permanent record of the story that you have been telling with your friends. I These games have been able to bring people together in such a fantastic way that no matter what the format, ideally the format would be we'd go once a week and it would be long and we'd be getting through the story much quicker than we are. But the fact that we're able to get people together at all, especially such wildly talented and incredible people as we have that I work with on these two shows. I know the narcissistic tendencies have incredible people as well. I can't speak to that as readily, although Hush Hush, I did appear on one episode as a guest star one time, which is very fun. Sorry. But yes, the people I have had a chance to work with are so creative and understand so well what the goals of the story are and how to. There's just some great moves. There are some great moves and some great plays. Um, that's kind of all I had to say. Just more and more gratitude. I'm looking forward to sharing episodes 9 in the next couple of days. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been another Roll Insight. Hopefully you enjoy. But that's it. Talk to us in the comments, leave likes, subscribe to the channel, all of that good stuff. And catch you next week. Bye-bye.